The familiar ding of the bell announced yet another customer as Shanice Thompson wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. Outside, the sky had already darkened, turning the gas station's fluorescent lights into a beacon along the quiet stretch of highway. 3 years at Sunrise Gas Station had taught her exactly how to balance the till, which items needed restocking, and how to spot trouble before it walked through the door. "Evening, Miss Shanice." The cheerful voice belonged to Mr. Wilson, a retired truck driver who stopped by every Tuesday for his lottery tickets and coffee. His weathered face broke into a smile as he placed exact change on the counter. "How's school going?" Shanice's face brightened at the question. "Got a B+ on my anatomy exam. One step closer to that nursing degree. That's my girl. You keep it, those books." He tapped the counter twice, his signature goodbye, before shuffling back into the night. These small interactions kept Shanice going through the long shifts. At 28, she wasn't where she'd planned to be in life, but she was moving forward. The gas station job paid the bills, most of them anyway, while she chipped away at her online nursing classes. Some nights, like tonight, she'd prop her textbook beside the register during slow periods, highlighting key passages while keeping an eye on the security monitors. The night manager position came with $1 more per hour, which didn't sound like much until you were counting pennies for ramen noodles at the end of the month. Shanice glanced at the clock. 10:23 p.m. Almost 5 more hours to go. Her small apartment waited 3 miles away. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with temperamental plumbing and a window that looked out at the brick wall of the neighboring building. But the rent was manageable, and she'd made it homey with secondhand furniture and plants that somehow thrived despite her irregular watering schedule. The door chimed again. A group of teenagers entered, laughing too loudly, probably looking for snacks after whatever movie had just let out at the cinema down the road. Shanice straightened her blue Sunrise vest and watched them carefully, not because she suspected trouble, but because young people had a way of grabbing items and forgetting they needed to be paid for. "Y'all finding everything okay?" she called over, her voice friendly but firm. "Yes, ma'am," one of them answered, already loading the counter with energy drinks and chip bags. Shanice rang them up efficiently, making small talk about the movie they'd seen. This was the art of the job, being personable without getting too personal, establishing just enough connection to be remembered as a human being rather than a transaction machine. After they left, she pulled out her phone to check her bank balance, a ritual she performed too often, as if the numbers might magically increase when she wasn't looking. They never did. $247.38 remained until next Friday's paycheck. The electric bill would take almost half, groceries another chunk, and then there was the textbook she needed for next semester's class. She'd been setting aside a little each month, but it wasn't enough yet. Shanice took a deep breath and put her phone away. Worrying wouldn't add dollars to her account. She turned instead to the stack of paper cups that needed restocking, focusing on the task at hand rather than the constant mathematical equations that ran in the background of her mind. The night stretched on. A trucker stopped for diesel and coffee, his eyes red-rimmed from too many highway miles. A young couple bickered softly over which snacks to buy. An older woman asked for directions to the interstate. Shanice handled each interaction with the same steady patience, a skill honed from years of customer service and life's harder lessons. At midnight, she took her break in the small back room, eating a sandwich she'd packed from home while scrolling through her class discussion board. Her comment on fluid balance in the human body was due before morning, and she typed carefully on her phone, double-checking her facts before submitting. "Hey, can you cover the register for a minute?" Her coworker, Darnell, poked his head in. "Gotta help a customer with something outside." Shanice nodded, tucking her half-eaten sandwich back into its container. Breaks never lasted their full 30 minutes anyway. Back at the front, she watched through the windows as Darnell helped an elderly man check his tire pressure. The night was clear, stars visible despite the gas station's bright lights. Sometimes, on quiet nights like this, Shanice would step outside just to breathe air that didn't smell like coffee and cleaning supplies. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her mother checking if she was still coming for Sunday dinner. Shanice smiled. Her mom didn't quite understand why her daughter was still working at that gas station when she could get a nice office job somewhere, but she never failed to send a text during the late shift. "Just to check in? Yes, coming Sunday. We'll bring the cornbread. Shanice typed back. Her cornbread was the only thing she cooked better than her mother, a fact they both acknowledged but never stated outright. The bell chimed again. A woman in scrubs entered, clearly just finishing a hospital shift, the exhaustion evident in her slumped shoulders. "Rough night?" Shanice asked as the woman placed a large coffee on the counter. 12 hours in the ER, she answered with a tired smile. "Worth it, though." "Always is." Shanice nodded, a familiar warmth spreading through her chest. That was her goal. Scrubs, long hours, the satisfaction of knowing your work mattered in the most fundamental way. 3 more semesters and I'll be joining those ranks, she said, handing back change. The woman looked up, really seeing Shanice for the first time. "Nursing student? Online program. Slow but steady. We need more good ones. Stick with it." She raised her coffee cup in a small salute before heading out. These were the moments that recharged Shanice better than any break. Random confirmations from the universe that she was on the right path, even if that path wound through a gas station at 1 in the morning. By 2 a.m., the store entered that strange suspended time when even the road outside fell quiet. Shanice used the lull to restock coolers, check expiration dates, and clean the coffee station. Physical tasks helped keep her awake, kept her mind from drifting too deeply into worry about the upcoming rent increase her landlord had mentioned. She was mopping near the entrance when headlights swept across the windows. A car pulled up to pump number 4, but no one got out immediately. Shanice watched, alert but not alarmed. Sometimes people sat in their cars to finish phone calls or gather their thoughts. Eventually, a man stepped out, mid-30s, wearing a uniform from the local factory. Third shift, probably stopping for fuel before heading home to sleep while the rest of the world began their day. She recognized the tired determination in his movements. He nodded at her through the window before pumping his gas. When he came in to pay, Shanice had already brewed a fresh pot of coffee, somehow knowing he would want some. "You're a mind reader," he said with a grateful smile, adding the coffee to his total. "Just good at reading faces," she replied. "That'll be $37.42. As he paid, he glanced at the textbook she'd left open near the register. "Student?" "Nursing part-time. My sister's a nurse over at County. Says it's hard work but good work." "That's what I'm counting on," Shanice said. After he left, she returned to her textbook, determined to finish the chapter before her shift ended. The words sometimes blurred before her tired eyes, but she pushed through, highlighting key terms with methodical precision. By the time the morning shift worker arrived at 3:45 a.m., Shanice had the store gleaming, the coffee fresh, and her mind full of information about cardiovascular systems. She gave a quick rundown of the night, which pumps needed attention, which items were running low, which regular customers might appear soon. Outside, the sky had begun to lighten almost imperceptibly. Shanice collected her belongings, punched out, and stepped into the cool morning air. Her car, a 15-year-old sedan with mismatched door panels but a reliably strong engine, waited in the employee parking area. She slid behind the wheel, feeling the familiar ache in her lower back from standing all night. The drive home took less than 10 minutes in the empty pre-dawn streets. Shanice climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment, each step a conscious effort as fatigue settled deep in her muscles. Inside, she performed her post-work ritual, shoes by the door, uniform in the hamper, quick shower to wash away the smell of gasoline and cleaning products. Clean and wrapped in her robe, Shanice moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to look at the sky. This was her private moment of peace, watching the day begin while her part of the world remained quiet. She made a cup of tea and sat on her small balcony, feet tucked under her on the single chair that fit in the space. Tomorrow, or rather later today, she would wake up at noon, attend her virtual class at 2, study until dinner, and then head back to the gas station for another night shift. The routine rarely varied, except for Sundays at her mother's and the occasional extra shift when bills loomed larger than usual. But in this moment, watching the sky shift from black to deep blue, Shanice felt a sense of possibility. Each day, each shift, each class was a step toward the future she envisioned. A future with daytime hours, meaningful work, and enough money to not check her bank balance quite so often. A bird began to sing somewhere nearby, its voice clear in the morning stillness. Shanice sipped her tea and allowed herself to simply be, not a student, not a gas station worker, not a woman worrying about bills, just a human being. watching the world wake up full of quiet determination for whatever the new day might bring. Tuesday shifts always felt different somehow. Not quite as slow as Mondays, not yet carrying the midweek fatigue that settled in by Wednesday. Shanice arrived at Sunrise gas station 10 minutes early, as she always did, giving herself time to grab a cup of coffee from the pot before clocking in. The afternoon manager, Luis, looked relieved to see her. "Thank goodness you're here," he said, already untying his apron. "Delivery truck came late, so there's still stock to put away. And the slushy machine is acting up again." Shanice nodded, setting down her bag. "I've got it. Go home and see your kids," Luis smiled gratefully. He'd been picking up extra shifts since his wife had the baby, and the exhaustion showed in the dark circles beneath his eyes. "You're a lifesaver, Shanice. Oh, and the till's short $5 for my shift. I already logged it." After he left, Shanice stood for a moment in the quiet store, mentally preparing for the evening ahead. Rain had started to fall outside, a gentle spring shower that would likely bring in more customers looking for shelter. She tied her hair back, slipped on her blue vest, and began the familiar routine of counting the till. The first few hours passed uneventfully. A group of construction workers stopped by after their shift, filling the store with muddy boots and good-natured banter as they bought beer and snacks. An elderly couple asked for directions to the highway. A teenager with bright blue hair carefully counted out coins for a bottle of soda and a pack of gum. Shanice handled each transaction with the same patient efficiency, making small talk when appropriate, staying silent when customers seemed to prefer it. By 7 o'clock, the rain had intensified, drumming steadily on the metal roof. Shanice had just finished mopping a trail of muddy footprints when she noticed a car pulling up to pump number 3. It was an older model sedan, once white but now a dingy gray, with a clear tape patch covering what should have been the rear passenger window. The car sat there for nearly 5 minutes before the driver's door finally opened. A woman stepped out, pulling the hood of her thin jacket over her head against the rain. Something about her movements caught Shanice's attention, a kind of hesitancy as if each step required calculation. Through the store windows, Shanice watched as the woman inserted a card at the pump, then frowned at the screen. She tried again, and again. Then she leaned down to peer into the car's backseat before making her way toward the store entrance. The electronic bell chimed as she entered, bringing with her the smell of rain and a palpable anxiety that Shanice recognized immediately. It was the look of someone trying to solve an impossible math problem while the whole world watched. "Hi there," Shanice said warmly. "Nasty weather tonight." The woman nodded, her eyes darting around the store before settling briefly on Shanice. "The pump's saying my card has declined. I know there should be money on it." Her voice was soft, with a slight tremor that suggested she was working hard to keep it steady. "Sometimes the machines act up in the rain," Shanice offered, though they both knew that wasn't the issue. "Why don't you try running it in here?" The woman pulled out a worn debit card and handed it over. Shanice ran it through the system, already guessing what the screen would say. "Declined." She tried again with the same result. "I'm sorry," Shanice said gently, handing the card back. "Is there another card you could try?" The woman's face flushed. "No, She stopped, then reached into her purse and began pulling out crumpled bills and coins, counting them on the counter. "I have cash, but I don't think it's enough. My kids—" She glanced back toward the car. For the first time, Shanice noticed 2 small faces peering out from the back seat of the sedan. A boy who couldn't be more than 7 and a younger girl, both watching the store with solemn expressions that seemed too old for their faces. The woman finished counting. "742, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How much gas will that buy?" Shanice looked at the small pile of money, mostly $1 bills and quarters with a few nickels and dimes mixed in. At current prices, it would barely get them a couple of gallons, not enough to get very far in that old car. "Where are you headed?" Shanice asked. "Home. We're about 30 miles out, just past the county line. I thought the card would work. I just got paid yesterday, but there was an automatic withdrawal I forgot about." The words tumbled out now, as if the woman needed Shanice to understand this wasn't normal, wasn't who she was. Shanice had been there, exactly there, more times than she cared to remember. The humiliation of standing at a counter with not quite enough, the mental calculations of what could be put back, what was absolutely necessary, the pressure of needing to get home, to get children fed and into bed, the weight of eyes watching you struggle. Without allowing herself to think about her own bank balance, Shanice made a decision. "Let's get you a full tank." The woman's eyes widened. "But I only have—" "I know," Shanice said. "Consider it a loan from the universe. You'll help someone else someday." "I can't let you do that," the woman protested, though there was a flicker of desperate relief in her eyes. "You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do it." Shanice took out her own card and ran it through the system. "How much will fill your tank? 30? 35? 35 should do it," the woman said, her voice thick. "But I don't know how to pay you back. I could mail it maybe once I get my next check." "No need." Shanice authorized the payment, watching as her own funds dwindled further. "Ramen for 2 weeks now, not just one. Just remember this feeling, okay? And when you're back on your feet, do something for someone else who needs it." The woman nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you." "I don't know what we would have done." Shanice handed her the receipt. "You would have figured something out." "We always do." She reached beneath the counter and pulled out 3 granola bars. "For the road. 1 for you and 1 for each of the kids." The woman accepted them with trembling hands. "My name's Tasha. I want you to know who you helped today." Shanice. "And really, it's okay. We've all been there." After Tasha left to pump her gas, Shanice watched through the window as she distributed the granola bars to her children, their faces lighting up at the unexpected treat. Something twisted in Shanice's chest, not regret for her decision, but a familiar ache at the unfairness of a world where mothers had to count coins for gas while their children waited hungrily. She was so absorbed in watching the family that she barely noticed the customer at pump 5, a woman in a tailored business suit filling up a luxury car that cost more than Shanice would make in 5 years. The businesswoman had been observing the interaction through the store windows, her expression unreadable. When the woman in the suit entered to pay, she gave Shanice an appraising look. "That was kind what you did," she said, placing her credit card on the counter. "Premium fuel, a bottle of water, and a pack of gum." Shanice shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Anyone would have done it." "No," the woman said firmly. "They wouldn't. Trust me." She signed the receipt with a practiced flourish. "The world needs more people like you." After both customers had driven away, the gas station returned to its usual quiet hum. Shanice checked her bank account on her phone, $212.38 remaining. Less than she'd hoped for, but she'd manage. She always did. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of transactions and tasks. A minor spill in aisle 3, a delivery of cigarettes that needed to be logged and stored, a couple of teenagers trying to buy beer with obviously fake IDs, whom she turned away with a firm but sympathetic "nice try." By the time midnight rolled around, Shanice had almost forgotten about the earlier incident. Almost, but not quite. As she restocked the cooler with energy drinks, she found herself wondering about Tasha and her children. Had they made it home safely? Would there be food waiting? Or was the empty gas tank just one of many shortages they faced? When Darnell arrived to take over the night shift, Shanice gave him the usual updates: which products needed restocking, which regular customers had already been in, which pump had been acting up. "Anything interesting happen?" he asked, as he always did. Shanice considered telling him about Tasha, about the choice she'd made. Instead, she just shook her head. Just the usual Tuesday. On her drive home, through streets slick with rain, Shanice felt a curious lightness despite her dwindling bank balance. There was something freeing about helping someone simply because you could, without expectation of return or recognition. It had been a small thing, really. $35 she'd miss but survive without. For Tasha, though, it had been the difference between being stranded and making it home. Shanice pulled into her apartment complex, noticing how the security light in the parking lot was still out despite her request to the landlord 2 weeks ago. One more thing to worry about tomorrow, but not tonight. Tonight she would sleep with the satisfaction of knowing she'd done one truly good thing today. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. She opened it to find a simple message. Made it home safe. "Thank you again." The kids say thank you too. "Tasha." Shanice smiled, wondering how the woman had gotten her number, then remembering the receipt she'd handed over. It must have had the store's contact information. She texted back a quick, "Glad to hear it. Take care," before unlocking her door. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and sank onto her worn sofa. too tired even to make the tea that usually helped her unwind. As she drifted toward sleep, still in her work clothes, Shanice had no way of knowing that her small act of kindness had set something much larger in motion. No way of knowing that the woman in the business suit was still thinking about what she'd witnessed. No way of knowing that tomorrow would not be just another day at Sunrise gas station after all. Shanice woke to her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. She groaned, fumbling in the half-light of her bedroom. It was nearly noon, but with the blackout curtains drawn, a necessity for anyone working night shifts, her apartment remained in comfortable darkness. The screen showed 3 missed calls from her manager. Greg? Unusual. Her shift didn't start for another 6 hours. Had she mixed up the schedule? Shanice sat up, suddenly alert, and called him back. Shanice, Greg answered on the first ring. Have you seen it? Seen what? Her mind raced through possibilities. A break-in at the store, a problem with yesterday's register balance, a scheduling conflict. You're all over social media. Someone posted about what you did for that woman yesterday. People are calling you the Sunrise Angel. Shanice blinked, trying to process his words. The what? I don't understand. That woman with the kids, the one whose gas you paid for. Somebody saw it and posted about it. It's got thousands of shares already. The local news station called the main office asking for a statement. A cold feeling settled in Shanice's stomach. She wasn't on social media much, no time really. And the thought of being discussed by strangers made her uncomfortable. Greg, I just helped someone out. It wasn't a big deal. Maybe not to you, but people are eating it up. The corporate office actually called me. They're not mad. They love the publicity. They want you to come in early today for a meeting. After reassuring Greg that she would be there, Shanice hung up and immediately opened her rarely used social media accounts. It didn't take long to find what he was talking about. A post from someone called Good News Daily showed a slightly blurry photo taken through the gas station window. Shanice at the register, handing what must have been the receipt to Tasha. The children's faces were thankfully blurred out, but Shanice's was clearly visible. The caption read, "Witnessed something beautiful today at Sunrise gas station on Highway 16. This cashier used her own money to fill up a struggling mom's tank when her card was declined. The mom had 2 hungry kids in the car and only $7 in cash. In a world full of bad news, this Sunrise Angel reminds us that kindness still exists. Share if you believe in everyday heroes." And people had shared it. Thousands of them. The comments section overflowed with messages praising her actions, sharing similar stories, and even a few people claiming to know which gas station it was and vowing to stop by. Shanice set down her phone, feeling oddly exposed. What she'd done hadn't been for attention or praise. It had been a private moment between her and Tasha, a simple recognition of shared humanity. Now it felt different somehow. Used. She showered and dressed mechanically, trying to shake off the discomfort. By the time she arrived at Sunrise gas station, 2 hours before her usual start time, 3 news vans were parked outside. There she is. A woman with a microphone hurried toward her as Shanice got out of her car. "Can we get a statement about your viral act of kindness?" Shanice froze, keys still in hand. "I'm sorry, I need to get inside. I have a meeting." More reporters called out questions as she hurried to the employee entrance where Greg was waiting to let her in. The door closed behind them, muffling the voices outside. "I'm so sorry," Greg said, looking both stressed and excited. "Corporate said to keep them outside, but they want you to talk to the local Channel 5 reporter later. They're sending someone from PR to help you prepare." Shanice shook her head. "Greg, I don't want to be on TV. I just did what anyone would do." "That's exactly why they want you. You don't even realize how special it was." He led her to the small break room where 2 people in business attire waited, a man and a woman, both with the polished look of corporate representatives. "Ms. Thompson, I'm David Chen, VP of Communications for Sunrise Fuel Stations, and this is Alicia Rodriguez from our PR department." The man extended his hand. "What you did exemplifies the values our company strives for. We'd like to publicly recognize your compassion." The meeting that followed was a blur of talking points, publicity opportunities, and corporate enthusiasm. Shanice nodded in all the right places while feeling increasingly disconnected from the experience. By the time they finished, she had agreed to a brief statement for the local news and signed a release for her image to be used in company materials. "Oh, and the company would like to reimburse you for the gas, of course," David said as they concluded. plus a bonus for the positive publicity. Shanice accepted the check they offered, too stunned by the amount, $500, to refuse. It would cover her electric bill and the textbook she needed, maybe even allow her to fix the persistent rattle in her car's engine. When she finally started her regular shift, the store was busier than she'd ever seen it. Regular customers mixed with curious newcomers, many openly staring or trying to sneak photos. Some approached the counter just to shake her hand or tell her she'd restored their faith in humanity. "My nephew showed me the post," said Mrs. Gunderson, an elderly woman who normally came in once a week for lottery tickets. Today she placed a small envelope on the counter along with her usual purchase. "I want you to have this. It's not much, but your kindness touched my heart." Before Shanice could refuse, Mrs. Gunderson had patted her hand and walked away. The envelope contained a $20 bill and a handwritten note. "For your education. Keep shining your light." Throughout the evening, similar scenes repeated. A construction worker left a $10 tip with a gruff, "Good job, kid." A mother with a toddler handed her a homemade thank you card with a $5 bill taped inside. A teenage boy awkwardly presented her with a small bouquet of daisies, clearly sent by his parents who waited in the car. By closing time, Shanice had accumulated nearly $200 in spontaneous gifts, along with a collection of cards, notes, and small tokens. She tried to refuse them, but people insisted with such genuine warmth that it felt more hurtful to reject their gratitude. Darnell arrived for the night shift, his eyes wide. "You're famous. My girlfriend showed me the post this morning. Said it made her cry." Shanice shook her head, emptying the register. "It's gotten completely out of hand. All I did was help someone who needed it." "That's why people are so touched," Darnell said. "Because you think it's no big deal. But most people would have just said sorry and moved on with their day." He hesitated, then added, "My mom was in that woman's position once. Card declined, kids hungry in the back seat. Nobody helped her. She had to call my uncle to drive 40 minutes to bring her cash while we sat in a parking lot." Something in his voice made Shanice look up. The usually cheerful Darnell looked solemn, his eyes holding a memory that still carried pain. "That's why what you did matters," he continued, "because that woman and those kids won't have that memory. They'll remember the time a stranger stepped up when they needed help. That changes things for people." For the first time since the whole commotion began, Shanice felt a glimmer of understanding. Perhaps there was value in the story being shared, if it inspired others to look at the world differently, to see opportunities to help rather than reasons to turn away. On her drive home, Shanice's phone rang. She answered through her car's speaker system. "Shanice? It's Tasha from the gas station yesterday." "Tasha, are you okay?" Shanice was surprised to hear from her again. "Yes, better than okay. I've seen what's happening online. I didn't post anything, I swear. I would never have exposed you like that." "I know you wouldn't," Shanice assured her. "Someone else was watching. It's not your fault." "Well, I wanted to tell you something amazing. After I got home last night, I checked my mail. There was a letter saying I got the job I interviewed for last week. The one I thought I'd messed up because I was so nervous. It's an office job with benefits, Shanice. Health insurance for the kids." Warmth spread through Shanice's chest. "That's wonderful, Tasha, really wonderful. I start next week, and I just wanted you to know that when I get my first paycheck, I'm going to do something nice for someone else. Keep the chain going, you know." After they hung up, Shanice sat in her parked car outside her apartment building, staring at the starlit sky through the windshield. Despite the overwhelming day, a sense of peace settled over her. Whatever came of the viral attention, Tasha's children had gone to bed with full stomachs in a home with electricity. Soon they would have health insurance. Some things were worth a little discomfort. Inside her apartment, Shanice spread the day's unexpected gifts on her kitchen table. The money would help with expenses, no doubt. But it was the notes that moved her most. Handwritten messages from strangers sharing how her story had affected them. Promises to pay forward kindness in their own lives. Admissions of times they'd needed help and received it or hadn't. She taped one particular note to her refrigerator. It was written in slightly shaky elderly handwriting. "Thank you for reminding an old woman that the world still has good hearts in it." I was beginning to wonder. As she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from Greg. "News at 11 is featuring your story. Corporate is thrilled. Oh, and brace yourself for tomorrow. The owner of Wells Medical Group called asking about you. Said she was at the station yesterday and saw the whole thing. Apparently she wants to meet you. Shanice stared at the message, her mind struggling to place where she'd heard of Wells Medical Group. Then it clicked. The largest healthcare provider in the state. The woman in the business suit who had been at Pump 5. The one who had said, "The world needs more people like you." Sleep was a long time coming that night. As Shanice wondered what tomorrow might bring, Shanice woke to sunlight filtering through a gap in her curtains. For once, she hadn't set an alarm. Greg had insisted she take the day off, claiming the company wanted to give her space after yesterday's media attention. More likely, they were preparing some bigger publicity stunt and needed time to organize it. She lay still for a moment, savoring the unusual luxury of waking naturally. Her phone showed 3 more missed calls from local news outlets and dozens of notifications from social media accounts she rarely checked. Ignoring them all, she made coffee and carried it to her small balcony. One of the few perks of her second-floor apartment. The morning air felt clean after yesterday's rain, and birds argued cheerfully in the scraggly tree that struggled to grow in the apartment complex's central courtyard. Shanice sipped her coffee, determined to enjoy this unexpected free day. Perhaps she could get ahead on her coursework or finally tackle the stack of laundry that had been giving her accusatory looks for the past week. Her quiet moment was interrupted by a text from her mother. "Baby girl, you're on the morning news. They're calling you an angel. Why didn't you tell me? Calling you in 5 minutes." Shanice groaned. Of course her mother had seen it. The phone rang almost immediately. "Mama, before you start, my daughter, the Sunrise Angel." Her mother's voice practically vibrated with excitement. "The whole church group is talking about it. Pastor Williams wants you to come speak to the youth group about compassion in action." "Mama, please. It wasn't a big deal. I just helped someone who needed it." "Not a big deal. Shanice Elizabeth Thompson, you're the only good news on TV right now. Do you know how proud I am to tell people that's my daughter? My baby girl with the big heart just like her daddy had." At the mention of her father, Shanice softened. He'd been gone 7 years now. But he'd been the one who taught her about helping others even when you didn't have much yourself. "Dad would have done the same thing," she said quietly, in a heartbeat. "Now tell me everything. What happened exactly?" The news only had that blurry picture. Shanice explained the situation with Tasha and the kids, downplaying her own role as much as possible while her mother made appreciative noises and occasional exclamations of, "Lord, that poor woman." "Anyway," Shanice concluded, "now it's this whole thing that's gotten completely out of hand. I'm just hoping it dies down soon so I can go back to normal life." "Well, sometimes God puts us in positions to be an example," her mother said. "You never know why these things happen the way they do." After promising to still come for Sunday dinner, and bring that cornbread, people will want to taste food made by the Sunrise Angel. Her mother finally let her go. Shanice smiled as she hung up. For all her dramatic reactions, her mother had always been her biggest supporter. The morning passed quietly as Shanice caught up on studying, occasionally peeking outside to make sure no reporters had tracked down her address. By early afternoon, she was deep into a chapter on cardiovascular nursing when a knock at her door startled her. Wary of who might be there, she approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rivera, stood outside, practically bouncing with excitement. "Shanice!" Mrs. Rivera exclaimed when the door opened. "There's a Bentley, an actual Bentley, in the parking lot. A driver in a uniform is asking for you. I told him I'd check if you were home." "A Bentley? Are you sure?" Shanice stepped onto the landing, looking down at the parking area. Sure enough, a gleaming black luxury car sat among the assorted older model sedans and SUVs that usually populated the lot. Several neighbors had gathered to stare at it from a respectful distance. The driver said, "Someone important wants to meet you," Mrs. Rivera continued, her eyes shining. "Is this about what you did at the gas station? My daughter showed me the post. So proud to be your neighbor, honey." Shanice felt suddenly self-conscious in her old sweatpants and faded t-shirt. Thank you. I should probably change quickly." 5 minutes later, wearing the black slacks and blue blouse she normally saved for exams or interviews, Shanice made her way downstairs. The driver, a tall man in a crisp uniform, spotted her immediately. "Ms. Thompson?" he asked, his tone professionally courteous. "I'm Howard. I drive for Ms. Catherine Wells of Wells Medical Group. She would like to speak with you if you're available." A small crowd of neighbors had gathered, watching the exchange with undisguised curiosity. Shanice nodded, trying to maintain her composure despite the strangeness of the situation. Howard opened the rear door of the Bentley, revealing the businesswoman Shanice had seen at Pump 5 the day before. In daylight, she was even more impressive, perhaps in her late 50s, with silver-streaked black hair cut in a precise bob and the poised confidence that came from years of authority. "Ms. Thompson," she said warmly, "I'm Catherine Wells. I wonder if we might talk privately? Perhaps I could come up to your apartment or we could sit in the car, though I realize that might feel a bit strange." Shanice hesitated, glancing at her curious neighbors. "My apartment is fine, Ms. Wells." Howard helped Catherine from the car, and Shanice led them upstairs, acutely aware of the building's shabby carpeting and the flickering hallway light that the landlord had been promising to fix for months. She hurriedly picked up her textbooks from the sofa once they were inside, offering Catherine the best seat, a second-hand armchair that Shanice had reupholstered herself with fabric found on clearance. "Can I offer you some water?" "Or coffee?" Shanice asked, falling back on basic hospitality to cover her nervousness. "Water would be lovely, thank you." Catherine looked around the small apartment with interest rather than judgment. "You're studying nursing," she observed, noting the textbooks. "Yes, ma'am. Online program. I'm about halfway through, and working full-time at Sunrise gas station." Shanice returned with 2 glasses of water. "Night shift supervisor. It works with my class schedule." Catherine accepted the water with a nod of thanks. "Ms. Thompson, may I call you Shanice?" "Of course." "Shanice, I was at the gas station 2 days ago. I saw what you did for that young mother and her children." Catherine's voice softened. "It affected me deeply, and not just because it was a kind thing to do. You see, 40 years ago, my mother was that woman." Shanice sat down slowly, her full attention now on Catherine's face, which had taken on a distant expression. "I was 8 years old. My younger brother was 5. Our father had left 6 months earlier, and my mother was working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. One night we were driving home from my grandmother's house when the car ran out of gas. It was late, cold, and my mother had exactly $3.17 in her purse." Catherine paused, taking a sip of water. "We sat at a gas station much like Sunrise, while my mother tried to decide if she should call my uncle, who lived an hour away, or ask the cashier if she could leave her watch as collateral until payday." "What happened?" Shanice asked softly. "The cashier, an older man with kind eyes, took one look at us and said, 'Ma'am, there's been a promotion today. Every 50th customer gets a free tank of gas and you're it.' My mother knew it wasn't true. I knew it wasn't true. But he gave her that dignity, you understand? He didn't make her feel like charity." Shanice nodded, thinking of how she'd framed her own help to Tasha as a loan from the universe. "That man changed our lives," Catherine continued. "Not just because we got home safely that night, but because he showed my mother that she wasn't alone in the world. The next day, she found the courage to apply for a position she thought was beyond her qualifications. She got that job, which led to a career that eventually allowed her to send me to college. I became a doctor, then started Wells Medical Group with a commitment to serving underinsured communities." She leaned forward slightly. "When I saw you help that woman, it was like watching my own history repeat itself. That moment at the gas station 40 years ago set my life on a different path. I've always wondered what happened to that cashier. I never got to thank him or tell him what his small kindness meant to our family." Catherine reached into her handbag and withdrew a business card, placing it on the coffee table between them. "I believe in cosmic balance, Shanice. I believe the universe presents us with opportunities to close circles, to pay forward what we've received. That's why I'm here today." Shanice looked at the card. Heavy cream stock with Catherine Wells, MD, CEO. Wells Medical Group embossed in dark blue. "I understand you're studying nursing," Catherine said. "Wells Medical Group has a scholarship program for promising healthcare students who demonstrate exceptional compassion, a quality that can't be taught in any classroom. I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your degree, followed by a guaranteed position at our new community clinic opening next year." Shanice felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. "Ms. Wells, that's incredibly generous, but it's not charity," Catherine interrupted gently. "It's investment in exactly the kind of healthcare professional our communities need. Someone who sees people, truly sees them at their most vulnerable moments. I don't know what to say. You don't need to decide immediately. Think about it. Talk to your family. Catherine stood, smoothing her immaculate suit. The card has my direct line. Call me when you're ready to discuss details. As they walked to the door, Catherine paused. One more thing, Shanice. That young mother you helped, I've been thinking about her too. If she's looking for work, Wells Medical has several administrative positions open. No experience required, just a willingness to learn. We offer childcare assistance as well. Her name is Tasha, Shanice said, finding her voice. She actually just got a job, but I can let her know about your offer if that doesn't work out. Catherine smiled. Please do. And Shanice, whatever you decide about my offer, don't underestimate the ripple effect of kindness. What looks like a small stone in the water can create waves that reach very distant shores. After Catherine left, Shanice stood at her window, watching the black Bentley pull away from the curb. Her neighbors immediately converged on her building, their curious faces tilted upward, waiting for her to emerge and explain this extraordinary visit. But Shanice stayed inside, Catherine's card held carefully between her fingers, feeling as if she were standing at the edge of a different life, one that had appeared so suddenly she wasn't quite sure if it was real. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of change. Shanice still found herself pausing sometimes, caught in moments of disbelief at how quickly life could shift course. The Sunday after Catherine Wells' visit, Shanice had brought her famous cornbread to her mother's house along with a bombshell announcement. Her mother had listened wide-eyed to the story of the Bentley's arrival and Catherine's offer, then burst into tears and pulled Shanice into a fierce hug. Your daddy is looking down right now. Just busting with pride, she'd said, her voice thick with emotion. This is what happens when you live with an open heart. The decision hadn't been as straightforward as everyone assumed. The scholarship was generous, covering not just tuition but also living expenses that would allow Shanice to focus full-time on her studies. But accepting meant leaving Sunrise Gas Station, the job that had sustained her for 3 years. It meant stepping away from regular customers who had become something like family, and it meant acknowledging that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't fully predict. In the end, what convinced her was a conversation with Darnell during her final week at the gas station. You'd be crazy not to take it, he'd said bluntly as they restocked the coolers. Look, this place will still be here if nursing doesn't work out. But passing up this chance, you'd regret that forever. So Shanice had accepted Catherine's offer, written a heartfelt resignation letter to Sunrise corporate offices, and begun the dizzying process of restructuring her life around full-time study. Now, sitting in the Wells Medical Group building where she attended classes 3 days a week, Shanice opened her laptop and checked her calendar. Clinical rotations would begin next month. Her grades were excellent, not surprising given that she could finally devote her full attention to learning, without the constant pressure of bills and work schedules competing for mental space. How's the studying going? Shanice looked up to see Tasha sliding into the seat across from her in the student lounge. Their paths had crossed again in an unexpected way when Tasha's new job fell through after just 2 weeks. The company had lost a major contract. Remembering Catherine's offer, Shanice had connected them, and Tasha now worked in the billing department at Wells Medical. Finals next week, Shanice said. But I think I'm ready. You're always ready. Tasha smiled, setting down her lunch tray. The kids are excited about coming to your place this weekend. Joey's been talking about your chocolate chip cookies all week. This too had been an unanticipated development, the friendship that had grown between them. Tasha's children, Joey and Lily, had become regular visitors at Shanice's new apartment, a modest but comfortable one-bedroom in a safer neighborhood, closer to both the medical center and the children's school. I got all the ingredients yesterday, Shanice assured her. And I found some books I think Lily will love. Her reading is really improving, thanks to you helping with her homework. Tasha's expression grew serious. You know I never properly thanked you. Not just for the gas that night, but for everything that came after. The job, the friendship, all of it. Shanice shook her head. You've thanked me plenty. Besides, look what I got out of the deal. My education paid for and 2 great kids to spoil occasionally. They chatted through lunch before Tasha had to return to work. Shanice remained in the lounge, reflecting on how their lives had become intertwined through one simple decision made on a rainy night. Later that afternoon, Shanice had her monthly meeting with Catherine. These check-ins had started as formal scholarship reviews, but had gradually evolved into mentoring sessions. Catherine, for all her wealth and status, turned out to be remarkably down-to-earth. She'd grown up poor enough to understand the invisible barriers Shanice navigated, even with financial support, the subtle insecurities, the feeling of not quite belonging in academic spaces, the exhaustion of constantly having to prove yourself. "How are classes going?" Catherine asked once they were settled in her office, a warm space with floor-to-ceiling windows and walls lined with medical texts and family photos. "Really well. Professor Chen says my care plan development is some of the strongest in the class. I'm not surprised. Your instincts for what people need were evident the first time I saw you." Catherine smiled. "And how's the community clinic planning coming along?" This was a new project, one Catherine had invited Shanice to participate in despite her student status. Wells Medical was opening a sliding-scale clinic in one of the city's underserved neighborhoods in the same area where Tasha and her children lived, and Catherine had asked Shanice to join the planning committee. "We've finalized the location, and the architectural plans look good. I've been talking with local community leaders about what services are most needed. Transportation to appointments is a huge issue. Many potential patients don't have reliable cars and bus service is limited." "Excellent insight. Let's add a transportation coordination position to the staffing plan." Catherine made a note. "This is exactly why I wanted you involved, Shanice. You see the gaps that those of us who've never struggled with transportation might miss." The meeting continued with discussions of equipment needs, outreach strategies, and staffing plans. At the end, Catherine handed Shanice an envelope. "What's this?" Shanice asked, opening it to find a check made out to Sunrise Gas Station for $500. "I understand you've been in touch with your former manager about establishing some kind of assistance fund at the station. This is seed money if you think it's a good idea." Shanice looked up in surprise. "How did you know about that?" Catherine smiled. "Greg called me. He said you'd been asking about setting up a program to help customers who come up short. He thought I might want to contribute." The idea had come to Shanice a few months after starting her scholarship. Despite her new circumstances, she'd never forgotten the look on Tasha's face that night, the mixture of embarrassment and desperate relief. How many others faced that same situation with no one to help? "I was thinking of something simple," Shanice explained. "A small fund that the cashiers could access when someone genuinely needs it. Not announced or advertised, just available. I didn't want anyone to feel like charity cases," Catherine finished. "I understand completely. It's about dignity as much as the actual help." Shanice nodded. "Exactly." The next day was Saturday, and Shanice made the familiar drive to Sunrise Gas Station for the first time in nearly 2 months. The store looked the same fluorescent lighting, same coffee station, same candy display by the register. But Greg had told her they'd seen an increase in business since her story went viral, with many customers mentioning they'd switched to Sunrise because of the angel. "Shanice." Luis called out from behind the counter, his face lighting up. "Man, it's good to see you." They hugged, and Shanice looked around with a blend of nostalgia and amazement at how distant this life already felt. "So," Greg said, emerging from the back office, "tell me more about this fund you want to set up." An hour later, they had hammered out the details. The station would establish Shanice's Bridge, a small discretionary fund available to help customers in genuine need. Catherine's seed money would be supplemented by a corporate match that Greg had secured, plus an ongoing donation option for customers who wanted to contribute. Cashiers would have the authority to access the fund without prior approval, using their judgment about legitimate needs. "We'll need to track it carefully," Greg warned. "Make sure it's not abused." "Of course," Shanice agreed. "But I trust the staff to know the difference between someone working the system and someone who just needs a bridge over a rough spot." As she prepared to leave, Shanice noticed the newly installed plaque beside the register. "Shanice's Bridge, helping others cross difficult moments with dignity." Below it was a small donation box and a simplified version of her story. "Is this okay?" Greg asked, seeing her reading it. Corporate insisted on some kind of acknowledgement. Shanice touched the plaque lightly. "It's perfect." Outside the gas station looked different somehow, smaller perhaps, but no less important. This place had sustained her through difficult years. Now it would help others in similar situations. That evening, as Shanice prepared her apartment for Tasha's children, Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It contained a photo of a young woman standing proudly in front of a now hiring sign at a local grocery store, along with the message, "Got the job. Your fund helped me get gas to make it to the interview. Thank you, Sunrise Angel." Shanice smiled, setting her phone down. The text was meant for the gas station, of course, but Greg must have shared it with her. She thought of the chain reaction that had brought her here. One small decision on a rainy night, a stranger's observation, Catherine's connection to a similar moment decades earlier. None of it planned, all of it somehow perfectly aligned. Tomorrow she would study for finals. Next month she would begin clinical rotations. Next year she would start work at the community clinic, bringing health care to people who might otherwise go without. And through it all, a small fund named after her would continue, offering bridges to people facing their own rainy nights in empty tanks, the cornbread. Ingredients sat ready on her counter. She'd promised to teach Joey and Lily her special recipe tomorrow. Life wasn't perfect. The world wasn't fixed. But in her own small corner of it, Shanice had discovered the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness, how it could echo forward, touching lives she might never see, creating possibilities she couldn't have imagined. And that, she decided as she measured flour into a mixing bowl, was more than enough.